Hi everybody and welcome to the Property AI Report. This is your weekly digest of all things property and AI, brought to you by me, McCallion, and my good friend and co-host Matt Goddard. Matt, how are you this week?
Warm. How are you, Matt?
That is essentially that word, yes, just all week long. It's been amazing, very, very, very warm. But yes, we can't complain, right? Because it doesn't happen often enough.
How was the heat on the way to Cardiff? Because I know you've had an exciting road trip for some AI initiative, haven't you?
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate to be invited to the Sovereign AI. So the government's sovereign, they call it Sovereign Wealth Fund for AI. They launched in Wales, the Welsh element in Cardiff last night. So really good to get down there, meet some really amazing people doing some really amazing things in AI. Got back very late last night. And up bright and early to do this because we need to make sure people know what is happening with property and AI. So let us quickly, because this intro is going on, talk about our property news. All right, property news this week. Big stuff about the impact of various things that have happened in the lettings market particularly. So landlords being far more selective about tenants now that the Renters' Rights Act is in force. Rental yields stabilizing after a period of softening is more stories coming out. Again, I know this is something that's you're pretty focused on. And Ben Beadles of the National Residential Landlords Association has been talking quite a lot about what the future holds. What's your take on this, Matt?
I don't think there's a surprise around this, is there, in terms of landlords who have stuck in the market and have stuck with their properties for rents, being more selective around who they're allowing in, given that now it's going to be harder for them actually to move tenants on as and when they need to. Obviously, with the abolition of Section 21s and the no-fault evictions, you're not just going to take a punt with a view that actually at the point I can serve notice, I will, and I'll get the property back. And there's obviously a lot more stringent in terms of the grounds to get occupancy back. So, of course, landlords are going to be a bit more selective and considerate when they're doing that. I think it just puts a bit more pressure on the lettings agents, doesn't it, in terms of what that extra information needs to be gathered for them. Do you think so, Mark?
Yeah. Listen, so I was speaking to an agent who was very focused on lettings in London, who runs a bigger than 10 branch firm. And he was being very, very down on the idea that essentially, people who want to invest in the UK aren't choosing property anymore. Because it's just too much of just there's so much going on. It's too confusing. It literally, you said, until Labour get out and Reform come in coalition, then, things aren't going to change. And then Reform's going to end up working really hard at trying to just fix stuff. And then it's going to be waiting for the Conservative government to come in in 8 years' time. And that's going to be when things go. I was just like, wow, that is some advanced thinking. But yeah, it just feels like, and I know that we periodically come back to talk about this, but I think it's so important. It's been such an important part of our industry for so long. And relatively, it's been under fire for a lot of that time. Whether you look at kind of generation rent or you look at kind of, the actual regulatory stuff that's come out potentially as a result of that sort of pressure. It just feels like it's gone. That idea of, people wanting to have that income, that ability to provide for the private rented sector is disappearing. And there are fewer professional landlords with multiple portfolios around. The kind of guts of it is, most of it is pretty gutted, and there is, there are relatively few options kind of left. I think it's just kind of like to flag it as, obviously our main story, because there have been a few different kind of disparate parts of it this week. But I think, you roll it up, and again, having talked to agents a lot this week about it, it just feels, kind of a month in, as we've kind of looked at it and been able to kind of touch it and hold up to the light, then actually it's done a significant chunk of harm to availability of property, people's good feeling about it, goodwill around it. And it is now just very much almost like a kind of grind and a sort of teeth grit if you want to kind of get involved.
Do you think that's the case in terms of the smaller independents and the sort of maybe less than 5 branch agencies, but actually when you see the likes of LRG and Lomond and these big private equity backed businesses who are buying up rent rolls and consolidating and creating these behemoths, mainly around the fact that you can put a multiple against sort of the recurring lettings revenue. Do you think that means we're moving more towards an institutional lettings industry rather than sort of the you touched on it last week, I think, with the accidental landlords vacating the sector, but actually more of these powers who get the economies of scales, and that's what's tipping for us. Because I always think of Germany, where it's 50% of the population rents, roughly, or probably 55 or something like that. We're not like that, because every person's house is their home sort of situation. That's sort of always been the UK approach. But actually, is lettings going to shift more towards that thing? So I think it's even 2 or 3 months ago, obviously John Lewis had made a big noise a few years back about moving into lettings, and 2 or 3 months ago they backed away. But these huge conglomerations, that's a good word for this time of morning, of tenancies together, is that where the dial's shifting?
Well, so I put that to this agent yesterday. Again, significant presence in London, multi branches right across the capital, and they said no. Actually, there's this kind of belief that the properties are being bought up by other investors to kind of continue to let out. And he was saying they're all being bought by end users, all of them. He said end users, so basically people who are moving in to live in them and buy them. So I think there is if you go further out into the rest of the country, yes, I think that there are those that are being bought up, but I think it's a percentage of, it's not 100%. I think it is there is a chunk that is going out into the owner occupier sector. And I think that the acquisition, the LRGs, the Lomans, the Dexter, all those kind of guys who are scooping up all of these rent rolls. Obviously, that's with the plan, as you say, to get the multiples to in the end to sell. But I do wonder, actually how many of those are permanent, because there'll be landlords within those rent rolls who are making decisions just like every other landlord's making decisions and thinking, this is too hard, I don't want to go. So there will undoubtedly be a kind of write down of some of those that they've acquired. Because they just won't continue to be that recurring revenue anymore, I think.
It's an interesting one, and certainly I think it's an education process. So some of the agencies, like Dexter's an example, went really early doors in restructuring for the Renters' Rights Act, and maybe a lot of people are sort of sneering from the sidelines, thinking, well, they've gone far too early, it's not all formalised. But it meant they were able to educate all of their hundreds of thousands of landlords in terms of what was happening. And some of maybe the positives for Dexter's or any letting agent is there's such a risk of compliance and raft of compliance that you can actually up people from let only to rent collect, and then from rent collect to managed. And actually that brings in its own revenue. And then also educating about, well, we can now start introducing rent reviews during the course of a tenancy. And if we do those Section 13s and then initiate the rent review and handle the tribunal process well, then there's a chance Mr. and Mrs. Landlord to get more income from it. And I think some of the forward-thinking lettings agents I've spoken to are seeing those opportunities. Yes, there's a whole host of pain, a bit like when the tenant fee ban came in and suddenly all those fees disappeared. People looked at, well, what else can I bring in around that? And that's when rent insurances started getting sold quite heavily, and now you're getting rent guarantor products coming in, because it's like, well, hold on, you're never going to be able to get rid of your tenant. It's the extreme view. That's where you need a rent guarantor product, and we can sell your rent guarantor products. Obviously, then there's the sort of referral fee based around that.
Yeah. So I do think there are opportunities, absolutely, but I do think that any change to what has been stated. Yeah. So if I'm a landlord and I've got 1-2 properties and it's been relatively stable, and then I'm like doing let only, and then now I'm kind of thinking, well, I've got to pay more for the let only, then I've got to go through a rent review, then I've got to this that. It just feels like hassle. And that's kind of what a lot of I'm hearing is actually that there are people just going, do you know what, like whatever it is, it's just too hard. But yes, so lots and lots going on as a result of the, as we look back, 28 days into the Renters' Rights Act actually coming into play, and it seems to be, having a significant downward impact on the rental sector overall. But no doubt we will, continue to look again, a few months' time and see what's happening.
Although just so the rent yield said it's actually softening, doesn't it? So it has been declining, but maybe there is a bit of a pivot. But yes, as you say, let's keep a watching brief on it.
Yeah, it's there is much still to play out in that, I think. Right, we are just going to dip back into the Rightmove court battle. Last week we were recording about this time last Friday, just before Rightmove responded to the the latest kind of dates being sent out about 2nd of November, 3rd of November, when the tribunal is going to take place. And we said, Rightmove have been quiet. And then literally about 10 minutes later, they went, we're going to fight this to the end. There's no merit whatsoever in this particular court case. And then there's been some interesting commentary this week, particularly from Graham Norwood, a great journalist over in Estate Agent Today, saying that it echoes the on-the-market controversy. Nostalgia fans taking it back to, I don't know, 2015 or something like that, when the one other portal rule, UPA, was great, wasn't it? It was like one of those things that was introduced by on the market at the time. The intention was that agents had to choose between either Rightmove and on the market, or Zoopla and on the market. Unsurprisingly, about 95% of them chose Rightmove and on the market. So Zoopla had a massive hit, basically taken out of it, which is then has been kind of ever since trying to build back up again. Graham's point is that essentially this kind of echoes that. There's a lot of noise. And what actually happened at the time that there was the court case, there was a court case about the one other portal rule, and the tribunal just went, seems fair enough. You can do what you like. If you don't want to do it, then don't join on the market. It's simple. So whether actually this will be a similar kind of thing, in terms of actually they're going to look at the Rightmove tribunal and go, well, you chose to be on there, so it's up to you. Which obviously, goes very much against the fact that this is a very dominant portal. It's got 70% margins, which suggests that the market itself is slightly askew. But yes, Matt, the more commentary has come out since the big announcement at the end of last week. What's your take?
The key point really is that monopoly point, isn't it? I was going to go for monopolistic, which I covered there. But
better, yeah. Better.
So you have to be on Rightmove, otherwise you're not going to get stock. Whereas the on the market bit was a stage where they had a very little market share, right? And so, having started as agents together and brought out the portal and being backed by the estate agents was one thing, but as you say, you could choose not to do it and just stick on Rightmove. So, yes, going to court and a portal is probably the most relevant to the story, but other than that, I'm not sure.
Not sure. And just for brand name fans, Agents Together obviously is a charity, which was very good. Agents Mutual was the thing that they did.
Thank you. Yes, I was thinking about which one it was.
Yeah, no, but yes,
and not Agents Giving either, which is another charity.
Another one, absolutely. But yes, just Agents Together, some amazing things, and are still going. So, right. On to sales progression. So, again, we like to talk about AI that's having an impact in the market, and this is a tool from who using this incredible AI to basically to take a chunk of time off the processing that they do. So Matt, I think this is something that you have a little bit of insight into. What's going on there?
So it's completely SAP obviously do, or not obviously necessarily do, the sales progression, outsource sales progression for a lot of estate agencies, and they've got some incredible sort of pipeline turnaround times compared to the rest of the market. But there's still quite a lot of administration within the business. So what we've actually done there, and I do a lot of work with Richard, Tony and the team there, is actually looking at the inefficiencies in the business and the administration, but also not just looking to try automate the life out of it, because of the fact that a lot of it is the human touch, is the people speaking and dealing with individuals during that emotional time of buyers, vendors, even the estate agents and conveyancers. So looking at where the efficiencies can come from, the very, very, very manual processes. An amazing part of it was we found that 40% of incoming memos to say, here's a deal, we need you to start progressing for us, were actually handwritten, and the information was contained outside of CRMs. So it's a case of the pipeline was just scribbled down on the back of an offer form, or there's other information, that phone numbers and email addresses. And even I've seen so many examples where he'll have, Mel McCallion, and then bottom right be his email address, and then a drawing to point at where the email address actually is, and then they get scanned and emailed across, and don't even hit the CRM. So this idea of, we're building integration with a CRM, you can cover off all of them quickly yourself, or you can build with the likes of the gang at Glue Dog. That information just not there. So it's a case of like what, and also an ethos of complete ACP is trying to make the business not have to change the way they work, and not say, actually, you now need to load all that into CRM that you've never done before, and then click this button that you've never clicked before to send us the detail. It's to sort of fit in with the way that the teams work already. So actually, rather than change the process of emailing a memo form, we looked at, actually, that's a great situation where you can use AI to grab that detail, think about, that person's drawn an arrow to the email address, and then take that information and build it into the process, and also build validation around it. So not just using AI for the sake of AI, because in a business like that where compliance is extremely heavy and you want to make sure the details are correct, it's actually using AI at the right points, but then actually building in the process and the deterministic code to take the detail to where it needs to be.
Yeah. And this, I think, is, for those listening, whatever your business, this is the critical piece, is actually AI that is almost kind of hyper personalized for you and your business. There are, there's a load of things that you can plug in, but starting to kind of understand what it is that's actually going to work for you is really, really important. And yeah, look, I think what they've done there is an absolute classic of find a loop, find something that's really annoying and actually is so obviously inefficient, and really kind of focus in on that and try and work through how you can use AI to fix it. Because it's those things that will prove to you and the team what AI is possible, what it can do, and then that leads on to some of the bigger, chunkier stuff. But I think that's really a powerful example of what it can do. All right, that is our property news for this week. Let's go and sit quietly and consider our AI and tech news this week. Now, for those who are fans of religion and getting involved with AI, we have from His Holiness the Pope Leo XIV what he's called the Magnifica Humanita. That is essentially Humanitas, which is from the Holy See of His Holiness Pope Leo XIV on safeguarding the human person in the time of artificial intelligence. This, so an encyclical letter, very rare, and basically kind of almost sets out, it's not quite a manifesto, but it's basically, very early on, popes get the opportunity to kind of set out their stall. And Pope Leo has basically gone really, really hard into AI. In terms of how he sees it having a huge impact on humanity, society, etc. Now, he called himself Leo. They can choose whatever they like, right? When they get made Pope, because there was, if you were to be a Pope, what would you call yourself?
Dave. There you go.
Pope Dave. Okay, Pope Dave the First. Great. I think I can see our ident coming together for this week's episode. Pope Dave.
I feel like I've been the Pope already on the ident. Sorry, carry on with the news.
Have you? Maybe. Anyway, so yes, so essentially, the Pope is out there. He's basically given his views on AI. They're generally, obviously, privileging humanity over AI. There was a previous Pope Leo around the time of the Industrial Revolution. This guy has deliberately called himself Pope Leo after the Leo from the Industrial Revolution, because he sees AI as being very much akin to that moment in humanity when essentially everything changed, and everything is going to change with AI. So he's very, very much kind of set his stall out as being, pro-human. Basically, and the word that he used was that we need to disarm AI. Okay, so disarming AI, and he said, I know this sounds like really quite extreme, but that's the thing we've got to do. We've got to make sure that it works for us, that it's not weaponized. So look, there's a kind of lot to unpack. He was up on I'm going to say stage, but it's probably an altar with one of the co-founders of Claude. Interestingly, not Elon Musk, not Sam Altman, somebody from Claude, from Anthropic, sorry, the co-founder. Who was also talking about basically AI for humanity. So it's caused a bit of a splash, because obviously 1.4 billion Catholics in the world, that's a big old chunk of humanity, and they get taught what the Pope says at church every week. So I think this is going to have quite an interesting impact. Matt, what's your take?
And on top of the points you made about Pope Leo, he's also the first American Pope, right? And he's the first one who's actually using technology. So he's of an age where he's got an iPad, he wears an Apple Watch, he watches cable TV. There's even questions being asked as to whether he wrote his manifesto, because I'm not going to try to attempt the fancy words, using AI. And who would be surprised that actually something from the Pope, and with a little bit of a religious bent, has been quite sort of divisive. And I've seen articles from big news outlets using the content to skew their own way, and then others sort of reading it the way they want to read it, and then painting it as positive, reading the way they want to, and painting it as a negative. But actually, it's only a couple of weeks ago the American government was talking about stepping in and slowing down the process of AI releases, and actually it was Biden during his tenure had it in place where everything was going to be checked by the government before being released, and then Trump came in and got rid of that, and now they're looking to bring it back in. And so it's interesting just to have that extra voice on top of it, and this is something that the popes do have the ability to issue on a regular basis. As you say, it's his first one, so given he said during his candidacy, it's the papal piece, isn't it? Like, he was big into AI even then, wasn't he? He's being called out as the AI Pope. So it's just another voice in the mix, and we'll have to see if we can get him on the pod.
And yeah, it does cast my mind back to his predecessor, who was it the Balenciaga, like big coat kind of stuff, and that was one of the first times that people had seen what was possible with AI and the kind of deep fake stuff. So yeah, it's interesting that the popes have very much been at the cutting edge of AI all the way through so far. So yeah, that is food for thought, particularly for those of a religious bent, as to where does AI fit into the kind of the whole theocracy and theology, in terms of what it should do versus humanity. Right, next up is the big drop of this week in terms of product. It happened late last night as I was on my way back from Cardiff, and I was very excited and texted it back straight away. Claude Opus 4.8 is here. It is pretty huge. It's pretty expensive. And Matt, it seems like Hallucinations might be back.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think we've heard of Hallucinations for a fair while now, have we? Although actually, and we have to remember we're in a bit of an echo chamber because people we speak to and listen to the pod are quite engaged. And then I know I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I was talking with a business where the founder, who was a developer, and the CTO still were thinking of Gemini as being more in line with Bard than sort of the beast that we sort of had blazing a trail through 2025. So not everyone necessarily knows the Hallucinations have gone. I heard another stat this week that obviously the majority of people who use Claude or used ChatGPT using the free versions, which are actually most of the time the older, dumbed down, using your data to train the model sort of models. Yeah, and even if you cast your mind way back to when DeepSeek first hit the ground last year, it was the first publicly accessible reasoning model because most people hadn't discovered the model in ChatGPT, right? Yeah. So it was like, we sort of think Hallucinations back. It may be that actually people are still dealing with that. So having done a quick recap, it's back. So there's been teasers coming about Opus 4.8 for a little while, and in our world that probably means like the last few days of sort of models appearing that look like a Mythos light. Mythos being the big groundbreaking model that's scared everyone and created Project Glasswing. And there's even
it's huge.
It didn't make our show notes, but there's been calls from both the UK government and European governments to allow them to be part of Project Glasswing, and the number of zero-day bugs being fixed by companies is incredible. And it's like that's still not been released, but in the testing arenas, this Mythos light started appearing. Whether that's 4.8 or not, we're not sure. But I woke up to a message from you, very excited on your drive back from Cardiff. I'm sure you sent it hands-free that it was out.
I was in a train.
Yeah, there you go, on a train. So it's really brilliant and strong for greenfield one-shot work in terms of you give it a prompt to build a website and it absolutely flies through, and in terms of prototyping. But it's struggling with sort of the final 10%. It can't quite stick and land on the finishing. It's where it's hallucinating is on bug hunting, and it's worryingly, it's really confidently wrong.
Right,
which you can imagine is quite dangerous in existing code bases. And it's also not quite ambitious enough. There's things where with 4.7, you would say, look, you've got my GitHub, you've got everything. You set all of that stuff up in advance. So you prompt it and it'd go off and investigate things and say, well, actually, in this project, we've done X, Y, and Z. And here's some ideas. And 4.8 doesn't seem to have that. You keep having to push it and be like, oh, hold on, we've covered this before, we've done that. And you're like, oh, you're right. Yes, here's that information. I can now find that in GitHub.
Yeah.
So I don't know if maybe they've rushed it out, or if it's a case of, that's ultimately, have they rushed it out? So it's like, what's the situation? And as you allude to, it's spendy.
Yeah. It feels like it's almost like a holding position until Mythos comes out. So basically they've got all this stuff and they're trying to release a safe version of Mythos. And this kind of feels like this is the safe version that they've kind of stretched out a bit. But in trying to kind of dumb down Mythos a bit, then they've probably dumbed down to the point of having hallucination. So it's better than 4.7, but it's obviously, not as good as Mythos, and it's kind of taking some stuff out. But yeah, I've been spending a lot of time this week looking at doing some Claude design with Opus 4.7, and like you said, it's amazing websites. So very soon you'll see a new modelprop.ai website that's been completely built with Claude design, and it's amazing, and like it's so fast, it's insane. But yes, it's good to see it out again. I don't know how deep this is going to go, because Mythos is going to come soon, because it kind of has to. It's been trailed for so long. But yes, in the meantime, this feels like a bit of a holding pattern. Interesting to see it. I haven't really had enough time to play around with it. Because it was last night, but we will continue to update as we get more and more stuff. I'm sure that it will trigger some kind of response from OpenAI, some kind of further response from Google, and so on going forwards. All right, we shall hurry through some more AI and tech news. We are quite fanboys of Demis Hassabis of Google DeepMind. He's Nobel prize winner, and everything. He says AGI is 3 to 4 years away. So just to recap on these really annoying acronyms. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. AI, obviously artificial intelligence. AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is when AI is so smart that it can do most human things as good as humans can do them. And then there's ASI, which is artificial superintelligence, which is when basically every AI can do things much better than the majority of humanity. AGI, Hassabis says, is 3 to 4 years away. So set your alarms for around about 2030, 2029. And basically AI will be doing stuff as well as you in most cases. So that feels pretty seismic, doesn't it?
It does, and it's maybe kicking back from where people were saying it's sooner, right? There was predictions that we'd already have it by now, and there's talk of the singularity, which is a pretty scary concept to be in the next few weeks at times. But it seems to be aligning, though, with other people. I think another co-founder of OpenAI, Ilya Sutskever, I probably really hammered the name there. But back in 2017, they were saying 2019 or 2021 for AGI, which is still a couple of years apart. But they sort of updated that, saying like much more likely to be 2030 or up to 2045. So it feels a little bit like people just sticking the fingers in the air.
It does change, and people can't really agree on what AGI is going to look like either. Some people are saying we're pretty much there already, and other people are saying, as Hassabis is saying, it's 3 to 4 years away. So look, again, we always just say this: go use this stuff. In some ways, it feels already a little bit better than I am at loads of stuff, like particularly coding and things like that. So from that perspective, it's not really about AGI broadly, is actually what is it going to do for you, and how well is it going to be able to help you to achieve what your business and personal goals are. Let's dive a little bit into some music stuff. So ElevenLabs has launched a new music generation model, and you love it, don't you?
I'm a big fan of music in general, right? And I always loved the old days of MTV's mashups, where you could I guess the first mashup that was actually not MTV was Run DMC and Aerosmith, right? Where they relaunched Walk This Way. And they've now done a version of ElevenLabs music where you can switch genres midway through the song. And there's not just ElevenLabs that are announcing things, because I think ElevenLabs may well make our tool of the week. So if you've not looked at it, you definitely should be. But Spotify have also made announcements this week, haven't they?
Yeah. So that, as you say, it's a big space, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So so fan-made covers, I think, is going to be really interesting. So they've Spotify teamed up with Universal to launch a tool for AI remixes. So that's quite important, because Universal, obviously one of the big music record companies with lots and lots of IP, with lots and lots of artists registered to them, are now kind of getting involved with AI and with Spotify. And I think that's a really interesting kind of move. And particularly as, I am old enough to remember when Spotify was the big bad as far as the music companies were concerned. And, basically everyone was going, streaming really bad, at least it's not, we have killed Napster, do we need to kill Spotify? And now obviously it's kind of, it's the establishment and they're working together with Universal. And it's the likes of Suno that are the kind of upstarts who are, basically sort of, trying to find ways to kind of do AI almost independently with music. So that Spotify, Universal, again, that's going to be an interesting tool to go and play with. Also got a note this morning from Suno itself to say that they've now launched CarPlay. So actually, again, if you've got an Apple phone and you plug it into your car to get your sat nav and all the other stuff on podcasts like this podcast, on your Apple podcast, you can also now plug in Suno, and you can just listen to AI made music for as long as you like. And, so you can get your driving home for Christmas kind of, style remixes of whatever kind of tunes. And then apparently you're going to be able to kind of mix genres halfway through as well. So lots happening in that space. And going to be interesting to see how much further it develops, because there's plenty there. A couple of other quick bits because we are running out of time. We've got China limiting overseas travel for AI talent, DeepSeek, Alibaba, and elsewhere. This kind of comes a bit hard on the heels of them actually blocking Manus from being sold to an American firm, to Meta. Matt, you've been globetrotting recently. You've been pressing flesh with the likes of Manus and others. Did you detect that they were very worried about the global situation and whether they're going to be able to stay in America?
Well, so it was Americans that I was meeting over in America, something like that. But it's very much the dialing back and the curbing basically what China are doing, curbing the travel for their top AI talent to make sure that they're not disappearing off. Because what Manus did is they actually moved their base to Singapore, thinking it would get round the problems with selling their company, and obviously
nobody would notice.
Exactly. And allegedly they were then bound to being stuck in China, and what did you refer to it? Disappeared. And so this not just the Manus piece, but everybody now has had that travel impact put on them. It's obviously slightly worrying from a humanitarian point of view.
Yeah, that's reasonably limiting. Other stories, we've got Elon Musk's XAI. So the kind of big story of the last couple of weeks is Cursor. So Cursor is a coding platform. It has historically utilized Claude Code, Codex, but just had a really nice interface that makes it really, really easy, so that they've supercharged it. They're worth billions and billions, hundreds of billions. Sorry, not hundreds, but tens of billions. And it's been mooted over the last couple of weeks that Elon Musk's XAI is going to take it over. So they've got an option, it seems, for that they're either going to pay them 10 billion to work with them, or 60 billion to take them over post the float of SpaceX XAI, which is coming up in the next couple of months. But now it seems that there's been a bit of a falling out, and potentially, who knew Elon Musk was going to fall out with somebody? But yes, it looks like the previous closeness that was being triggered over the last few weeks is now starting to fray. Again, just to recap, XAI has built two massive data centers, one called Colossus 1, one called Colossus 2. Colossus 1 is now being rented out by Anthropic. Again, Elon Musk had previously slated Anthropic and calling them evil. Now they're paying him billions of dollars, so he's fine with that. Then he gave Cursor Colossus 2, which is the brand new one, which historically should have been used by XAI, which is why everyone's just thinking, right, that means that Cursor is going to be taken over by XAI. But now there seems to be some fraying of that relationship, and Elon Musk is warning people within XAI not to talk to Cursor people who are sitting in the same building, basically. That kind of it?
Stipulated that basically it was a missive sent by the directive by the General Counsel there, James Burnham's, basically very blunt. It just basically says that the interactions with Cursor staff must be limited solely to the implementation of a previously announced technical collaboration. So there's definitely something going on, right?
Yeah, 100%. All right, that's all we've got time for in AI and tech news this week. And we are going to dip very quickly into Weird AI of the Week. All right, our occasional series now focuses on the weirdness of AI being used to resurrect the voices of dead pilots. So we've had a few stories of, relatives of people resurrecting their loved ones. Now, this is kind of a bit darker, because actually these are people who listen into or you get transcripts of and actual recordings of pilots as they're kind of talking over radios and things like that. Now strange people, very strange people, are using those voices without any kind of attribution, without any authority to then recreate these things, and then kind of use them for just basically very strange kind of purposes. This is there's one particular guy, Scott Manley, a popular YouTuber, whose channel combines physics, astronomy, and video games, was talking about the ability to reconstruct these, and that basically has been what's happening. So, there's been a lot of people out there who have started to utilize that. So now the government is trying to pull those back. But again, it just kind of speaks to the idea that we are going to find AI being used in very strange ways for very weird, there's very highly niche purposes. And for all of us, we've just got to be kind of on our toes a bit about what is true and what is not, because in AI, even more, as we're about to see in our tool of the week, you can do pretty much anything. All right. moving on to our tool of the week now. I wanted to just kind of, we were speaking again last week, Matt, and we were talking about Google Omni and about how it's coming. Now, I spent the early part of the weekend looking at this last weekend, looking at how I could kind of get access to Google Omni. It's not available in our area right now, so it wasn't something I could play around with. I was looking to do some videos because as of next week, I'm doing the 40-day 40 location tour, right, with Resistance 3, and taking it out there and kind of trying to build out this a suite of videos, so 40 videos, and then one that covers the kind of whole tour. And basically, it was amazing. So I was using Claude Design, which was able to create literally 40 prompts quickly off the bat. It was able to describe the background. So, Brighton, it was talking about, kind of a lot about the kind of drag queen side of things and all that sort of stuff. Then we have Manchester with bucket hat people in the rain. And then you got kind of, bagpipers up in Edinburgh and all this sort of stuff. And it was just, so it created all these prompts, and then I put it into HeyGen Avatar 5, which has Sea Dream underneath it. And literally, I mean, if you go on to modelprop.ai/summer 26, you can see one of these videos of me, and there's loads of others on LinkedIn that we've been putting out this week. And they're just all different and all fascinating and all amazing. And it's just me walking through streets and basically talking to camera, my avatar, talking to camera about, what we're going to be doing, which particular time, which particular location. And it's just, honestly, it was mind blowing. Yeah.
I think you missed a trick. So obviously, I tasked you last week of saying Omni's dropped, but need to go away. So yes, Omni, understandable. You didn't use your VPN to get access to it, which you'll need to set you up with. But I think you missed a trick, and twofold, right? It's a very bittersweet symphony style for those old enough to remember. We won't get cut for not playing it or mentioning it's fine, right?
Yeah, I think
so you should be walking down the street in a leather jacket, bouncing into people. So I didn't think there's enough shoulder barges from my point of view. But I also think you maybe missed the likes of Renton running down Princes Street rather than the bagpipe when you're doing Edinburgh.
Should have done that. Should have had much more kind of
pop
reference
culture
to culture, all that sort of stuff. The next one, all right, that's where we'll go. We'll go there instead. But yeah, look, basically go have a look at it. It's amazing. So like I said, Claude Design, you can just articulate what you want to do from video perspective or whatever. It will create prompts for you. They can be wildly different. If you've got different areas of your locality that you represent, then again you can start kind of talking to different areas and why they're special and all that sort of thing. And then if you put that into HeyGen Avatar 5, it can use Sea Dream 2.0, and then it's got some pseudo music over the top that's vaguely adjacent to Bittersweet Symphony as well. So just
strings.
Go over it. Yeah, exactly right. All right, that is all we've got time for in another epic episode. You need to go because you've got meetings and so on. But yeah, listen, it's been, love this. Thanks so much for listening in, everybody. Really enjoyed the chat, Matt. And we will be back again next week with plenty more property and AI news. Until then, have great weeks. Enjoy.
Take care, everyone.